Welcome back, everyone. As you can see, we have our favorite doctor with us, Dr. Beth. Dr. Beth, you have done a great job talking about many different things. I think thyroid was our last episode that we did, but we wanted to talk a little bit because we do talk a lot about mental health and mindset and all of that. And how does mental health and food match? Like, how does it interact with each other?
Yes. And this is such a great topic, especially I think in general, it's an amazing topic. And especially with the most recent, pandemic and everything that's been happening, a lot of us were kind of going for the easy choices, or we might have switched and made healthier choices, right? It could go either way. So with food in regards to mental health, food has a huge impact. In naturopathic medicine, we have the saying, let food be thy medicine and thy medicine be thy food. And so when you are consuming highly processed foods, you're consuming highly toxic foods, highly, chemical ridden foods. If you look at the back of most processed foods, you cannot pronounce the ingredients that are on the ingredient label, right? And so when we're consuming a lot of these toxins, a lot of these dyes, a lot of these, preservatives, we cause a lot of inflammation in our body. And we've talked a lot about inflammation in terms of adrenal health, hormone health. It has a huge impact on mental health as well, because when we are inflamed, our brain actually becomes inflamed too. It can alter our mental status. It can alter our thinking. It can alter our mood. So it has a huge impact on our mental health.
So I'm intrigued with that. When you said when our body's inflamed, our brain is inflamed. I don't think I ever put the two together. I don't know. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah. So a lot of what happens when we talk about inflammation, high cortisol, just super inflammatory foods, it causes a lot of different cascading events inside of our body, especially if you think of inflammatory conditions like rheumatoid arthritis or osteoarthritis. The itis is that inflammatory condition. If you hit yourself, or you get an injury, inflammation happens in that area to help heal. So inflammation in and of itself isn't always bad. It's when we have chronic inflammation that it starts to break down a lot of things, right? Because when we do have injury, we have a lot of the blood coming in, a lot of that redness and that, that heat in that area. So that does show that we are healing. But like I said, if we are chronically inflamed, that's the opposite of what we want, right? It's actually going to start breaking down a lot of things.
So what are some of your, I know we always say, don't go to processed foods, eat as natural as you can, eat as organic, but there's just so much coming at us all the time. Mm-hmm. And where we are right now in, the state of, for us in the United States, the state of our country, not, I know also the two Tracys are from Canada. It's, there is not always easy to purchase all of this stuff. What are some of your recommendations for that, removing that processed and moving into that, healthier way?
Yeah, no, and that's a great question, especially, I'll piggyback on that. When you think about healthy alternatives, like Beyond Meat burgers or Beyond, the fake meats and the fake cheeses. And if you look at that, you might as well just eat dairy. I mean, unless you're lactose intolerant or something, because it is so highly processed. So a lot of foods can look like health foods, but they are packed full of processed preservatives and chemicals and all of these things that we don't really want. So I think that's a really great question. So really looking at healthy alternatives. Are they actually healthy? Really, what I like to teach is looking at the back of your ingredient label, right? Actually looking at what's like, seeing what is in your ingredient label. Usually the first few are going to be the most like the highest content in that ingredient. So let's say you get like garlic salt and they've got like, I don't know, maltodextrin or whatever, you know, anti-caking stuff, something, and then salt and then garlic at the very end. You should look somewhere else, right? Because guaranteed you're not getting a lot of actual garlic and a lot of salt. So I like to teach really looking at the food label, seeing what you are consuming. And then if you can't get away from a lot, like if you can't access organic all the time, that's totally fine, right? Just making sure to eat real food, which means vegetables, fruits in their normal form, you know, meats that are not, you know, if you want to go beyond burger, cool, but I wouldn't suggest doing it all the time because it is so highly processed, right? All the vegan cheeses, you know, dairy-free cheeses. And that's the other thing too, is a lot of the dairy-free cheeses have casein in them, which is the protein in dairy. So a lot of the vegan cheeses, you have to be careful because it'll still contain dairy, even though it's not the lactose, right? So again, really focusing on eating your whole foods, right? Getting in your fiber, getting in actual food instead of just from a box.
So sorry.
Go ahead, Tracy.
I was just going to say, so now we're back to, again, being marketed this processed food under the guise of something else. So we're still getting exactly what we were getting before, but we're fooling ourselves thinking we're actually doing ourselves good. And it all goes back to eating natural foods, which we continually say when we talk to you. There's some basic stuff, water and natural foods as much as you possibly can. So that's crazy. That's that we have to, well, it's our body, I guess we have to, but that we can't just buy a product thinking it's natural and good for us and it actually be natural and good for us.
Yeah. And that's so true. And in regards to mental health, what we eat. So like, let's say somebody has ADD or ADHD, if they're consistently consuming saturated foods, fried fatty foods, things that have high fried fat, all of that, that's actually doing them a disservice and it's making their ADD and ADHD worse, where they should be looking at more whole foods, looking at more of like the fatty oils from fish and chia seeds and omegas. You know, how we feel also affects what we're craving. A lot of times when people are depressed, they start to eat, you know, the ice cream and like pizza, and it's actually there's some science to that really. And it's like the dairy and the carbs help to increase dopamine in our brain, right? It's what we're lacking when we're depressed, when we're sad. So, you know, really focusing on mental health. And even if you're in that situation, I mean, I'm all for going and eating pizza, getting ice cream when you want it, but not eating it all the time, right? And not letting your mental health status or how you're feeling really control what you're eating, if that makes sense. Really just learning, okay, this is how I'm feeling, this is what I want, but is it actually going to help me in the long run? And usually the answer is no.
So there's specific foods depending on your mental health. So if you're anxious and you happen to eat a lot of this, it's going to make it worse. If you're, like you said, AD, I can never remember all the letters.
Yeah, the ADD. Like,
or you're sad or depressed, there's specific foods for each area of mental health, or it's just an overall, just go back to the basics?
Overall, go back to the basics. And what you also said, yes. So ADD, ADHD, people who are hyperactive, they have worse symptoms when they're eating fried fatty foods, you know, highly saturated fatty foods. Whereas if they focused on eating really good, you know, fish, chia seeds, the omega-3 fatty acids from foods, it would actually, reduce their symptoms a lot. It would help them in the long run. People with anxiety, I constantly see women coming to me and they're like, I am just so anxious. And I'm like, oh, and you're drinking 4 Red Bulls a day. Yeah, of course, you would definitely be anxious. Drinking caffeine, the caffeine, high caffeine is definitely going to increase anxiety, especially in those who are prone to anxiety. Even IBS is something that we kind of talked about with gut health. It's also a mental, emotional, what we call psychosomatic, meaning that your emotional state is going to cause you to either have diarrhea or constipation, the irritable bowel syndrome. And a lot of times what you're eating too will stimulate that as well, because it will affect our mood.
Wow. That's incredible, eh? We don't think about this enough, I don't think. It's just, especially because everything is so readily made and available and easy, and that's what we go for, because we're training ourselves to be instant. Yeah. So I mean, when you look at that, it's going to take a lot more time. We're going to tell ourselves it's going to take a lot more time to create something healthy for ourselves than just to do the fast food processed stuff, right? It's like, it's amazing. Yeah.
I think that's also because we're not teaching ourselves that we come first, our health comes first.
Yeah.
And so that's the way we should do it. I just want to ask a question about sugar. Is sugar just the evil of all evils?
So it depends on the form of sugar. If it's, cane, like just straight table sugar, where it's taken away from the fruit, from the cane, then yeah, that's highly inflammatory to the body. If you're eating sugar in the form of fruit and vegetables, where it actually is bound with the fiber, I mean, even sugar cane itself comes in a very fibrous, like bamboo-like stalk. And when you eat the fiber and the sugar together, the fiber actually helps to balance our blood sugar that we consume, right? And so if you take away that fiber, then you're just going to get a huge bolus of glucose in your blood. It's going to have a huge insulin spike, and then you're going to feel that immediate crash, 30 to an hour later. So when you're separating things like that, then yes, it causes a lot of inflammation, a lot of problems inside of the body, and it does affect our mental health as well.
Wow.
So we've talked in some of our past episodes on the amount of food that we eat. Mm-hmm. There's that calorie deficiency, and we've talked about even 1,200 calories are too low. It's ideal around a 1,500 calorie. Is that also affecting your mental health?
Yes. When you are chronically starving yourself, even if it's not intentionally, right? I'm not saying that everybody who's in a caloric deficit is, has an eating disorder. Ultimately, what we are doing though at that point is starving ourselves. So our body will then go into a fight or flight reaction, and then, cortisol will be released. And as we've talked about, our body doesn't recognize if there's an actual bear behind us trying to kill us, or if it's just an imaginary stress, or it thinks, okay, we're not consuming enough food. We must be in a starvation mode. Like, food is scarce. So it's going to start holding on to everything. You're going to be more anxious. You're going to even have low self-esteem because of it. What comes along with, trying to be in a caloric deficit, and yet you're not seeing results, right? So that's also going to mess with our mental health. So really, when we're stressing out the body, our brains and our chemicals in our brains actually do start to change.
Wow. It's amazing.
Mm-hmm. Oh my God.
How everything is all connected.
Yes.
Yes. I know. It's pretty crazy.
So if I can do one thing, so I'm just starting and I go, I need to at least change something. Is it the sugar? Is it add that water? Is it just change? Like, can I start with baby steps? I'm just not ready to go full in, and I'm, time is everything, and I want ease and all that. So what's one thing I could do?
So I'll give you a few things that you could pick from, just to start. Number one would be to look at food labels. I'm sorry, there's a lot of screaming behind me. I don't know if you can hear that. So there's just really reading the food labels to see what exactly you're consuming, because that will start to make you more mentally aware and actually conscious of that decision, so that you can start becoming aware of like, I'm consuming a lot of chemicals. And then from there, you can kind of compare different brands of things. If you're going to go for like canned foods, try to find cans that say BPA free, because a lot of cans are, they line the inside with BPA, which is like a plastic. And so that's a hormone and endocrine disruptor, meaning that it's going to just go into your body and just mess up a lot of things. So if you're going for canned foods, looking for maybe a BPA free, looking at the ingredient label, just comparing the two to see, okay, this one has a bunch of chemicals, but this one doesn't. This one seems more natural than this one. So really, food labels is one. If you're going to eat sugar, I eat sugar every now and then, right? I'm never going to tell somebody to stop. I practice what I preach. And so I say, go for it. If you want some ice cream or something one day, if you're habitually eating it though, that is where we're running into a problem. So maybe making the change of getting, ice cream and sherbet to freezing berries and then turning it into like a smoothie, like putting it into the blender and making your own like sorbet sort of thing. Because then you're going to get the fiber as well as the sugar. So making those small changes can be really helpful. Obviously, the sleep, the water, all of that is also going to be really helpful. So yeah, if you're going to make one change, right, making less choices as far as processed foods. So if, you're constantly going and getting like frozen meals, maybe changing, that, right? And maybe instead going and getting something that you could cook in a crock pot or something like that. Small changes.
Those are excellent.
And I think that's important, small changes, because when you go so fast, so hard, so in, your whole body is like, what are you doing? No, I'm going to react, and not in a good way. We're going to want that chocolate. We're going to want that soda. We're going to want that alcohol. We're going to want, like, you're depriving me. I want. So I like that you said small changes, and then you can build off of that. Ladies, any other questions?
No, that was awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome info.
And you can just
Again.
see that cycle where you are feeling depressed, so you eat the ice cream, and then you feel depressed because you ate the ice cream, so you go, well, I might as well eat some more. And it's I'm gonna start checking my cans though, my labels.
Yeah.
I didn't even think of the plastic though, but that makes sense. How do they keep it? Yeah. Okay, I got mine.
Yes.
Got my first easy step.
Yay. Yeah. And really just, taking the baby steps, just like all of you were saying, especially Michelle, doing the simple baby steps is going to allow you to not hit that burnout, right? If you're just trying to throw everything like the whole kitchen sink, you're just going to reach a state of burnout. And then you're just going to go back to, well, I'm eating the cake and the ice cream, chocolate and the alcohol and all of that. And then also too, if you drink a lot of alcohol, maybe changing from beer to, sorry, there's a lot of stuff here, maybe changing from beer to like just a vodka with like tonic water or something, really kind of decreasing the amount of sugar that you're actually eating.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Dr. Beth. As always, so informative.
Yes.
Greatly appreciate you taking time out of your busy day today.
Yeah.
And please, if you have any questions for Dr. Beth on today's topic, please note them before. Make sure you go back and look at some of her past meetings with us. They've been very, very informative. Anything that you have a question for Dr. Beth, also put them in here. I know we will be linking her website and everything there. And make sure you subscribe. We do come out every Wednesday, or hit the notification button to make sure you're notified when our next episode is available. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Beth.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching, and we hope to see you as a regular member of our community.